By show of hands, who would say in the room that you don't mind having the attention on you, right? If everybody were to look at you, you're kind of like, what's up, right? How many of you are on the other side? You're like, if everybody were to, in this room were to look at you, you would feel very uncomfortable, right? You would be like avoiding eye contact. You would look down and like, oh, that's not enough. You would look up, but you would do anything to avoid looking at anybody who may be looking at you, right? But if we're honest, we all want and sometimes need some positive attention, right? And we get that attention from maybe the achievements, from maybe band or sports. And there is that attention that maybe we want, but there's some attention that we don't want, right? Like I said just a moment ago, if everybody were to look at you, you're like, bro, please look the other way, right? Stop looking at me, right? Y'all would probably lose your mind and be like, stop looking at me, right? See, there is that negative attention that some of us do not long for, where we stand out like a sore thumb, meaning we look different maybe at the time, or we do something that's completely opposite from what everyone else is doing, right? There is that negative attention. Some of you that play sports or in band, there is nice attention when your coach or your instructor says, hey, great job. But then there's some negative attention where you play the wrong note, where you forgot the drill, and they just lose their mind on you. Anybody ever experienced that? And you're like, why? Why? You kind of want to be like that Simpsons emoji, just like slowly going in. Please stop. Don't look at me. Don't talk to me. Right? Or maybe everybody could relate to this one. Maybe it's when your parents call you out for not doing certain chores, right? Anybody had that happen where you were supposed to do something and they put their whole focus on you? They start yelling. They go from your first name and then they move to your middle name, right? And you're really in trouble if they use your first, middle, and last name. Anybody know what I'm saying? Right? You don't want that type of attention. Or maybe you had said the wrong word, or you said something wrong, or you did something that was just, everybody was just kind of like, what? Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Who's been on the receiving end on that side? Yeah. Me many times, like dinner at my house, I'll be saying something and they'll be like, what are you saying? What? But see, most of us try our hardest to simply blend in, right? To simply blend in. That we don't want any attention, whether positive or negative. We don't want any attention on us, so we settle for just kind of moving with the crowd, right? I shared that story a couple weeks ago where the football team, like I didn't know what they were saying, and they would like go into the huddle like, just making a bunch of random disgruntled noises, right? And I would just do it because I just didn't want to be like, okay, cool, right? See, we a lot of times find ourselves trying to blend in. We don't want the attention on us. We rather just blend in and for no one really to notice anything about us. And see, we blend in our hardest, which can look like talking the way our friends talk, right? Adapting their language, right? I'm a testament to this. I grew up in a private school, didn't hear a word of cussing until I moved to public school. And in 6th grade, I was just coming home with new words, and I would say it to my mom, like, yeah, da, da, da. And I'm like, what? What? Yeah. You think Kelly's scary, right? She's 4'11", but she'll take you down, right? I would be saying, and she was like, what? But I was blending in. I was adapting my language and the way I talked to the people who were around me so that I would blend in, right? Which it could be cussing like a sailor, or maybe it's gossiping about people. Maybe blending in our hardest can look like us acting the way our friends act, which could be going to a party, right? Getting drunk, vaping, doing whatever we can just because that's how they act, and we want to blend in with them because they're our friends. Blending in our hardest can even look like letting the ideas that our culture puts in front of us override the truth of what God says, which could be like adopting the world's language and idea on the individual identity of who you are. See, if you're a follower of Jesus and pursuing to be, if we are a follower of Jesus and pursuing to be holy as God has called us to, then can I tell you, blending in is not really an option. Sorry, spoiler alert. It's not really an option. And the title of my message tonight is I want to encourage you is this: choose to be holy, don't blend in. Choose to be holy, don't blend in. I want to look at three people that we're going to read about in the book of Daniel. And you may have heard of this story if you grew up in church in some capacity. But these three guys that you probably know them by the names of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Is anybody familiar with their story, right? So you heard of them, right? But I want to look at these guys because these are three people who pursued holiness. They stuck out like a sore thumb because they chose not to blend in and instead chose to be holy. And if you want to be actually correct, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that was their slave names when Babylon took over Jerusalem, right? And so their actual names are Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And many of you know them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And we just read a passage in Daniel chapter 3. And here's to give us some little bit of pretext so we can really unpack the meaning of the context of what we're reading about tonight. And see, here's what we need to know. Babylon has invaded Jerusalem, right? They have invaded Jerusalem. They have taken some Jews to the kingdom of Babylon, where they are surrounded by a foreign culture, new people, different government, and a new religion. Just imagine if somebody came over here and took you from the United States and dropped you off in Sweden. I don't know. Russia, right? Like, it would kind of be scary. It's a new culture. There's different government. There's a new people. And especially for this context, what's important to know, there's different religion. That they were not worshiping the God of Israel in Babylon, but there was idolatry that was taking place. The king at that time was Nebuchadnezzar. Everybody say Nebuchadnezzar. Say it 3 times fast. Nebuchadnezzar. There we go. And he has appointed 3 people from the royal family out of the nation of Israel to be in his service, which is the guys that we know of, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Continuing on, King Nebuchadnezzar made a gold image of himself for everyone in Babylon to bow down to and worship. And the key thing is when they heard the music play, they were to bow down and worship this gold statue of Nebuchadnezzar. And if they didn't, the consequence of this decision, if they did not bow down, is that they would be in the fire, in a furnace, right? I don't know what it has been over the past couple weeks. I keep bringing up fire in our stories, right? Like I was like talking about my story, caught on fire. Here's some guys that about to face some real tough fire. But we get to this spot in the story. The music plays, everybody's bowing down in Babylon, and there's 3 guys that are recorded that did not bow down. And the guys that we know are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And I want to point out why I'm sharing this story and to really bring some connection points. Because I would say, right now, where we're at in our world, we're in a modern day Babylon, where we have many people worship different things. There's the God of themselves. There's other gods that they look to. And that you're not necessarily in an environment every single day, especially in your school, where you are being cultivated to ultimately be the best follower of Jesus. But the reality is, you're facing more temptations to bow down to your own desires, which contradicts the way of Jesus, right? Bowing down before different things. And so you're not living necessarily in a world that is helping you cultivate your relationship with Jesus. And there's many moments, if you have not experienced them already, where you are going to have to choose on whether you will stand or if you will bow. if you will stand strong in your faith and worship the one true God, or if you will bow and worship the idols and different things of this culture that are happening here right now. So really, I want to look at this context and understand that this is a parallel really to what we're experiencing a little bit now. Now, it's not necessarily as bad in our context of physical persecution, but for some of you, in your mind, what's worse than physical persecution is the ideological persecution. It's the social persecution of someone looking at you different, of someone not being your friend, or of the relationship not going well. And it's the social persecution that has often led us to bowing down to things we don't need to be bowing down to. But I believe that God has called us, this generation here in the room, to not bow down, but to stand, to not blend in, but to choose to be holy. And I want to look at these three young men and how they responded in the decision to be holy over blending in. I want to give you a couple thoughts tonight. First one is this: let your actions speak louder than your words. Let your actions speak louder than your words. See, what can cause us to blend in with the world and fall into temptations is when our words say one thing and our actions say another, right? An example of this is when someone says, let's say, I don't want to get drunk anymore, but they still keep going to the bar every single day and surrounding themselves in that context. It's when someone says, I want to be pure in my relationship with my boyfriend or girlfriend, but yet you're still hanging in each other's bedrooms with the door shut. It's when someone says, I want to stop talking bad about people. I don't want to talk bad. I don't want to tear anybody down. But yet you continue to talk bad about the next person that rubs you the wrong way. See, when we start to fall into sin and temptation, it's because we allow there to be gray areas. And these gray areas only occur when we don't draw a line in the sand. And I want us to really understand this, because I think a lot of us have this verbal commitment with our words that I want to do this, I want this holy lifestyle, but what's happening is the follow through with our actions. And that we talk a good game, I want this, and I want to pause that, guess what, there's going to be stumbles across the journey, there's grace, but I want you to have this conviction to say, but I want to make sure I'm living a holy life, giving God my life in every action, in every scenario that I find myself in. And it's important, as we have made a decision to follow Jesus, that we draw the line in the sand with things in our life, right? That we draw a line in the sand. Okay, I'm following Jesus. Okay, I'm dealing with, let's say, I'm dealing with toxic, let's say, relationships. I just keep finding myself in bad relationships over and over again. Okay, let's draw a line in the sand. Let's take the next little bit to really invest in yourself, in your own relationship with God, so that you can learn how to stand independently without relying on someone else. Instead of saying, well, if someone comes along, I guess, but saying, you know what, first I'm gonna give my commitment to God instead of kind of being wishy-washy, right? You have to eliminate this gray area. You have to draw a line in the sand saying that, you know what, I'm a follower of Jesus now. This isn't in my notes, but I think it's important. I heard this guy, his name's John Tyson. He said something really profound, and he said, there's a difference between saying I can't do something and I don't do something. See, I can't is somebody has put those barriers on me that I can't do this, I can't do that. But I don't eliminates the gray area of I can't. Because I can't means I can be persuaded a little bit. I can move a little bit. You keep talking to me, I'll move a little bit this way. But I don't do this is creating a line in the sand saying, I don't do this. I don't to go back to the examples we just looked at, I'm not going to go, I don't go to parties where I know there's going to be alcohol, drugs, all this stuff, right? I don't go into the person I'm in relationships room, right? I just don't. And you have to create this attitude of not that I can't, but I don't. Why? Because I'm choosing to be holy. I'm choosing to be holy. I'm choosing not to blend in. That was a side note. Let's get to Daniel chapter 3, verse 16. It states this: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to King Nebuchadnezzar. Remember, they did not bow, so they're brought to the king. And guess what they say? Check this out. Underline this if you have it in your Bible. They say this: we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. We don't need to defend our case before you, King Nebuchadnezzar. We don't. What a bold statement. Because it's at this moment that the king's actually giving them a second chance. And in that second chance that the king's saying, hey, right before this, he's like, if you bow down, we're all good. It's all good. But yet they say, hey, we actually don't need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. Why is that? Because their actions have already showed where their loyalty lies. Their actions have already showed where their loyalty lies. See, no words are needed. Their actions have showed where they stand. Here's the thing. You want to know when you start really moving forward in your faith is that when the people who ask you to do one thing that would cause you to sin, stop asking you. Why? Because they know where you stand. That you don't have to defend yourself. That because your actions speak louder than words, guess what? You're going to start positioning yourself where people are not going to start tempting you anymore because they know where you stand. They know where your loyalty lies. Are y'all following me tonight? Some of y'all are like, okay. See, when we allow our actions to speak louder than our words, we make it clear to ourselves and to others where our loyalty lies. We need to eliminate the gray areas in our life for ourselves and for others. Let your actions speak louder than your words. Choose to be holy. Everybody say holy. Choose to be holy and don't blend in. Second thought is this, out of observance of this passage: love God more than the outcome. Love God more than the outcome. Daniel chapter 3, verse 17, if we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. Pause this. This is like a hype up moment if we're reading the text. Yeah, that's right. I'm standing up. You got nothing on me, king. Go ahead. Throw me in the furnace. Right? You would think like this is like the spiritual hype up. Like, okay, I'm good. Yeah, my God's bigger and greater. But check out verse 18. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. What a powerful statement. Hey, we believe that God can deliver us, but here's the thing. Even if he doesn't deliver us on this side of the earth, my loyalty is still with him. I'm still not gonna bow. I'm still not, and here's what we need to understand, because many of us have this natural way of thinking, right? Is that like when I practice like my sport or instrument that I do, I'm gonna get better at it. Right? When I study, I should get a better grade. Right? This is how many of us, though, treat our relationship with God. God, I'll love you, and because I love you, I expect to get this girl or get this guy. Because I love you, I expect for you to make me popular. Because I love you, I expect for me to always win, or at least my version of winning in every aspect of life. Can I tell you, this is harmful thinking that leads us to choosing to blend in over being holy. This is what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are telling the king. I'm hoping that there's going to be a good outcome. I'm hoping that I don't get burned to shreds. But at the end of the day, my loyalty still lies with God. At the end of the day, I'm gonna choose to be holy, and even though a whole nation will bow down to this idol, I'll still make the decision that I'm gonna stand. And that my knee will only bow down to the one true living God. I must love God for who he is, and let that be the driving reason for me to live a holy life. Love God for who he is. Some of you are like, well, you're trying to outpace, you're trying to change your behavior in the way you live your life, instead of first understanding that changes when you have a deep love for who God is. Because if you don't love God and only know the principles that, this is what a good or better person should be doing, then you're gonna keep finding yourself blending in. You're gonna keep finding yourself bending down to idols in your life. The thing is that you gotta love God more than anything else. And that's where we get with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I love God more than anything else. And so if that leads me into the furnace, let it be. Some of us need to have this reality check that just because you love God doesn't mean everything's going to go the way you think it's supposed to go. This is where so many people mess up and people go in and out with their faith. Where it's like, man, I love God, everything's going great. Man, I'm really gonna take a step back. Everything's just going downhill, different things. And people keep going back and forth instead of just saying, no, I love God in my mountaintop moments, but also in my valley moments. I choose God in my highest moments and in my lowest moments. I choose to be holy regardless of the outcome, because I am not called to blend in with this world. I'm not a part of this kingdom. Yes, I'm in this world, but guess what? It's not my forever home. I'm excited, y'all. This is good. Here we go. See, these young men, their love for God was more than their love for the outcome. And this was displayed through a couple things. Here we go. Complete commitment. This is shared where they said they don't need to defend. They had complete confidence, knowing that God will save. They had complete courage. If he doesn't save us, guess what? We still won't serve your gods. And they had complete conviction. They will give up their lives before worshiping any man-made God. Love God more than the outcome. Choose to be holy. Don't blend in. What happens next? They make this statement. They say it to the king. We read on in the text. King Nebuchadnezzar actually gets furious, right? Because they have now just openly defied him, not just with their actions, but with their words, saying, hey, we're not going to do this. And here's what happens in the text. It's shared that King Nebuchadnezzar turned the fiery furnace up 7 times. And here's how crazy this guy is. The people that were turning up the furnace and that were escorting Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they died. Like, this dude's killing his own men because he's so angry with the 3 who would not bow down to his idol. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they go in the furnace. And this is where we get a cool moment where we get to see God's faithfulness unfold in a way where, guess what? There was a different outcome in store. In Daniel chapter 3, verse 25, King Nebuchadnezzar said, look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire. How many guys stood up and didn't bow down to the idol? Not a trick question. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. How many is that? 3. Everybody say what? 3. He said, look, I see a 4th man walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed. And the 4th looks like a son of God. And many scholars believe this is Jesus showing up here in the Old Testament. And the king had them come out, and they came out, and guess what? None of them had been burned. So God did deliver them. The Lord was with them in the fire. Now check out this. Daniel chapter 3, verse 28. If you still have your Bibles there, check this out. Guess what it says? And Nicole, you can come up and play. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's commands and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. What? This guy, basically, just a few minutes ago, turn up the fire, let them burn, let them go. Just raging. This dude's angry, so angry, he's letting his own soldiers die because of the heat of the furnace. And yet, because he sees that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were not alone, and that there was someone else in the fire, something clicked with King Nebuchadnezzar where he understood their God is real. Can I tell you tonight why? Your God, the God that you serve, is very much real. He is very much alive. And he's very much present regardless of the outcomes that you may experience in your life. So we got King Nebuchadnezzar saying, praise be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Last thought is this. See, when you choose to be holy, it impacts people around you. When you choose to be holy, it impacts the people around you. I want to share something very exciting that we're doing a little bit different this year. Starting next week, we're doing what's called a UI Super Series. And we're calling it The Move. I know some of you have been asking, are we going to do a back to school thing? Here's what we're doing. Next Wednesday, for the next 3 weeks, we're going to have 3 weeks. We're going to have a different event each week where we're going to have America Night, Pink Out Night, and School Spirit Night. We're going to have different things happening on each of those nights. But the purpose of these nights for the next few weeks is to put your faith in motion. That as you decide to live as people who are holy, to live set apart, my prayer is that it would impact the people around you, right? So that's the purpose, is for you to have your faith in motion, either by praying, everybody say praying, either by praying for your friend, everybody say sharing with your friend about Jesus, and even inviting, everybody say inviting them to you. Why? See, I guarantee that you have friends who claim to be Christians, or maybe you have friends who don't, but they are bowing down to idols in their lives. That have take place of God. Whether it's the idol of relationships, whether it's the idol of sports, whether it's the idol of a sin that they are engaging in. And what the move is all about is about putting your faith in motion, praying for your friends, sharing about Jesus with your friends, and inviting them to be a part of the community that we are experiencing right now, so that they can continue to grow in their faith. So that's why we're having these next few weeks. The move is so that you would be commissioned to live a holy life, and that it would draw people to wanting to listen to what you have to say.